While we're known for charcoal, we don't believe it's a cure-all. We think that it's best used with other natural remedies, but we think that charcoal is a God remedy because it has no known adverse side effects with it. And it's universally used. It doesn't seem to matter where we go when we travel, whether it's Africa or India, whether it's the Caribbean or UK. A lot of people know about charcoal. And right now, charcoal is enjoying a sort of a fad here in America. It's become probably one of the #1 ingredients in the health and beauty sectors, the categories in the marketplace. And everybody's interested in it, from soaps to charcoal cloth and fabrics and face masks, as well as supplements. It's into animals are given charcoal. It's in agriculture. Never mind outer space. They use it, and those are some of the things we'd like to talk with you and your audience this afternoon about the many applications of charcoal. We had no idea until we actually started, our business, the many different applications for charcoal. And we put together a PowerPoint presentation that we sometimes use, and maybe I can share that on our screen and see if I can work off of that. And then if at any time, if you have a question and you want to jump in or steer me in a particular direction, please do that. I'm going to try and share the screen with you right now and see if I can get this one program up. Okay, are you seeing this program? It's a PowerPoint presentation.
Yes, sir. Yes, we're seeing it.
You are seeing it?
Yes, I am.
Okay, let me put it into share mode. We have a series of programs that we put on, and we like people to be proactive. We want them to be their own doctor. And so we've titled our program, "You Are the Gatekeepers of Your Health, You Decide." We want to educate people so that they have more information, so that they can make better choices and see that they have more than just one or two options. And charcoal, well, it's God's humble servant, and it is a servant to us, but it's a servant to every part of society today, whether it's the aerospace, whether it's the military, whether it's the food industry. All these different industries use charcoal vitally. Now, a number of years ago, when I was in Uganda working there, we were contacted by a woman who worked with the Methodist Church. She had actually invited us to her church in northern, I think it was Washington State, and asked us to put on a program for her church. Well, she became so enthusiastic about it that she asked us how could she use charcoal in her location in northern Uganda. They were working with refugees coming back from the Sudan, and they were doing a language school teaching the local people how to read and write by learning how to read and write the Bible. They had Protestants and Catholics, and even had Muslims who were enrolling in their program. But they also wanted to teach them something about health. And our friend Carol was a physician, a physical therapist, but she learned that charcoal could really work well in her area. Something that was very common. You mentioned in the introduction that a lot of Jamaicans know to cook with it. And in Africa, it's sort of ubiquitous. Everybody cooks with it, and you can find it anywhere. So Carol wanted to do that. And so she started a one-day workshop teaching people how to use charcoal, how to prepare it, how to clean it, how to store it, and then how to give treatments and how much to use and so forth. Well, together with their language class that they were doing, they were invited into prisons to teach literacy. And here we have a picture of Carol, and I'm just going to call this man, what should we call him, Sam. Sam is one of the inmates at this particular prison, and he's very sick, and he has sores in his mouth. He's got open wounds. What is he gonna? And by the way, this is this is 2000, what was this, 2012, I think it was. So this is not the pandemic, even though he has masks on. Sam is contagious, and they don't know exactly what he has, but he's very sick. And Carol decided to give him some charcoal. So she brought him a jar of charcoal. Now, this is not activated charcoal, just charcoal that they would make right there in northern Uganda, grind it up into a powder, and that's what she brought to him. Well, within days, his terrible stomach pain disappeared. The sores on the sides of his tongue started disappearing. His eyes cleared up, and he was feeling so much better. Well, the other prisoners started asking, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, I'm taking this charcoal." And they all wanted charcoal, and all Sam had was a small jar of charcoal, and he had no idea if he was going to get any more. But this spirit, came over him, and he started sharing with the other prisoners the little bit he had. Well, obviously it wasn't enough, and so Carol came back with her husband, and they put on a workshop in that prison. And it turned out at the time that there was an outbreak of dysentery in the prison. And it's very common in that particular country, Uganda. I think dysentery is, between dysentery and cholera and malaria, they range the #1 cause of death in the country. So it's a very prevalent cause of death. So they taught the men how to prepare charcoal. And they brought in a sack of charcoal that they would buy to cook with. Well, that particular day, there was several men, I think they said 6 men were in the latrine with severe diarrhea, and the guards said they would probably be dead within 2 or 3 days. They had severe cases. Well, they went in and they gave them some charcoal. And in this next slide here, if I get it to move, no, it's not moving for me. Let's try something else. The guy with the stick who's pounding charcoal in that urn was one of the 6 men that were in the latrine. Now you can imagine how clean a men's latrine would be in a prison in Northern Africa. But here they are. Within 1 day, he's out there and he's grinding charcoal, and all the men are, "What are you doing?" The whole prison had 1 degree or another of dysentery. The guards had it. Even the warden of the prison had it. In 1 week of using just plain charcoal, the entire prison was free of dysentery. How remarkable! I mean, it's just so remarkable. And going back to Sam, he was actually diagnosed later with HIV. He also had tuberculosis. And yet, with such a simple remedy as charcoal, he was feeling so much better so quickly. It is really remarkable. That was Uganda. Since then, I should mention that Carol and her husband were invited by the cabinet minister for prisons in Uganda. They were given a symbolic key to all the prisons in Uganda to go and teach literacy and how to treat disease naturally. And one of the treatments was charcoal. What a simple little tool God gave to this couple. And since then, I think it was 3 years ago, Carol sent me an email and said that fully 13,000 people had been educated in prisons just from their small ministry, how to prepare charcoal, how to store it, how to apply it, how to drink it. You can imagine all these men, as they returned back to their villages, they took with them, they became charcoal missionaries, and they were able to introduce a simple remedy that was affordable to anybody in any location in their country. Well, we've also been in Kenya, and a few years ago, we put on an evangelistic series there, teaching the gospel. But at the same time, we were teaching natural medicine. Of course, one of the things we showed was charcoal. And here we have a picture of a man with severe bed sores. He's had them for 8 months. It's taking up almost his entire buttock area. And the young man who's doing this is a Bible worker. He's better in mechanics in agriculture than he is in medicine. But from what he learned in the short time that we were there in Kenya, he took that information and he is making a charcoal poultice and applying it over this man's terrible bed sores. He's in so much pain, he can't sleep, he can't move. The family doesn't know what to do. He's been to the hospitals. They've said there's nothing more that they can do for him. And so he's on his own, he's back at home. Here, this is, believe it or not, and maybe you can't see the difference, but from my training as a physician assistant, I can see that in just 3 days on the ring of this vast wound is new tissue is already developing. 3 days. And yet this man's been treated in a hospital for 8 months and he's not showing that benefit. Well, let's go to another slide here. This is, here is day 11 and the wound is already shrinking. Just 11 days of treating it with charcoal powder, not the activated charcoal that maybe we have access to here in North America in the hospitals. This is just very simple charcoal. What are we talking about? Just plain charcoal. Something that you would have after you've had your, you go out on the beach with friends and you get some driftwood together and you make a fire and you tell stories and you sing songs. And as the night goes on, everybody heads home. And what's left over is in your campfire is medicine, real medicine, potent medicine. Now, why would anybody in their right mind want to use charcoal? It's so common, it's so available when we have these very powerful drugs. Well, as we're learning, as time goes on, we're learning that drugs have more and more nasty side effects. In fact, the Journal of the American Medical Association said that fully 225,000 deaths a year or more can be attributed to the wrong use of drugs or the wrong prescription by doctors in hospitals. And consequently, once they start, a lot of drugs are addictive and it's very hard to wean people off of them. And they sort of hear this phrase, expect to be on this for the rest of your life, when in fact, you don't have to be. And you just saw 2 illustrations there where people were severe cases, pain, where hospitals were not working or hospitals were not available or drugs were not available. And that's what's happening too. We're hearing more and more that drugs are, different diseases are becoming more and more resistant to drugs. In fact, some drugs will stimulate a disease in a hospital. It will trigger a disease. And now how do you turn that trigger off? You put that together with more and more world calamities all around the world. There's calamities are increasing. Tsunamis, floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, pandemics, wars. Well, with all those things, that really does cripple the infrastructure, so it makes it even harder to maintain good sanitation. Water, there's more and more water contamination. Of course, when the water is contaminated, disease spreads even faster. Power failure, transportation failure, spread of disease, and lack of medical care. All these things are pointing us to something that we need to use locally, that we don't have to reach across some ocean or reach across the nation or try and get to a hospital. Is there something very close that we can use? Well, there is. Right back in that campfire that we thought was dead for the night, there is a medicine. There's a medicine for this sick world that we're living in today. And that's what we want to educate the folks with in this program, that really there are options for the people. Now, some of you may remember the tsunami a number of years ago in Japan. If you followed the news at all, there was this great scare that this nuclear radiation was going to contaminate not just Japan, but it was going to drift across the ocean to the west coast of America. And everybody on the west coast was buying potassium iodide tablets to mitigate the effects of radioactive poisoning. Now, here's a picture of one of those reactors in Japan that blew up. And right down here at the bottom, there's a box with, it's a filter. It's an air filter that filters all the radioactive air in that facility before it goes up those pipes and out into the atmosphere. Each one of those cribs held anywhere from 8 to 12 tons of coconut activated charcoal. Why? Because coconut activated charcoal is the #1 antidote in the world for radioactive poisoning. But how many people heard that on the 6 o'clock news? What they were told was to put on masks. It does do absolutely nothing. Same way with COVID, these masks do absolutely nothing. And here was a remedy close at hand that anybody could have used. And the only reason we found out about this, not because of the 6 o'clock news, but because that's our business. We have a business, Charcoal House. We sell charcoal all around the world to all different kinds of companies, hospitals, you name it. We sell charcoal. That's our business. And we saw coconut charcoal prices suddenly escalating higher and higher. And we contacted our manufacturer and said, what's going on? Why are these prices going higher and higher? And he says, well, really, John, he said the Japanese government is buying up all the coconut charcoal, activated charcoal on the market to try and do containment for this nuclear fallout. But we never heard that on news, did we? But nevertheless, because of our connection to the manufacturing industry, we did find out about it. Now, you mentioned earlier that I've written a book called Charcoal Remedies. And I knew if some people who didn't buy the book, if we posted it on the internet, people would go there and they could get a lot of information, not only that's in the book, but also that we've learned since we wrote the book back in 2006. And the website has a lot of information, more information than you're getting just in the book itself. Now, we also put together something for children, and I'm just going to mention in passing. It's a website called godmaybe.com. We want to teach children very early on how to use natural medicine. And using the Bible, we show people how God made us, how we can keep healthy, what we can do when we get sick. So the books also show you how to make charcoal poultices, how to do hot foot baths, teach these children. And these children then can go home and teach their parents how to use natural medicine. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of our program that we live out in the corner of Northwest Nebraska. This is one of our warehouse offices. We're expanding now to another storefront on a major highway. And next week we start the 12,000-foot addition on this building to try and keep up with the interest of charcoal and its many, many medicinal applications. We do live out in the country, and we have high-speed internet, but we also have Pony Express. This guy here that you're seeing is galloping down one of our roads onto the highway, and he's going back to our neighbor who's a veterinarian for this community. And she was a bit skeptic when we first started, but not anymore, not anymore. And Kimberly's going to jump in here and narrate this little story about a colt that we got a call from. Kimberly, why don't you just go through these pictures here?
Okay, do they see day one? Okay,
Yep.
So anyway, we got a call one day, and this horse had been bit by a brown recluse, and brown recluse spider, and they were treating it with a veterinarian, and they had used antibiotics, and also the vet was using colloidal silver, but it wasn't touching it. And finally, it was getting worse, and on can you show day 7?
Well, they shaved the area so they could see that the wound was increasing.
Yeah, they were taking pictures. They had actually seen brown recluse in their barn, and so they were quite sure that's what it was. And so on day
10.
Yeah. So anyway, they contacted me, and we overnighted some vet detox, and we told them to actually give some to the horse internally, and then also to apply it topically. And so they were very willing to do it. They got it the next day. They started to apply it, and immediately it just started to improve. And within 2 weeks, or what?
Well, you can see right here on this slide, it says day 11, where you can see the charcoal on the outside of the wound. The
Granulated.
woman just plastered it. She didn't make a bandage or a poultice. She just plastered it right on and inside. And as Kimberly said, you can see even on day 11, there's some improvement. And we can go to the next slide here.
And now it's really improving. I mean, I know it looks a little gross, but it's truly improving. And then you can go to day 17, and this is how they did it. They just applied it topically, and that's what you can do yourself to your own personal wounds. It was very difficult. They weren't going to be able to wrap it on the horse or anything like that. It was right on his neck. But for yourself, you can apply it topically and then just wrap it so it doesn't get all over everything. And they were actually pretty shocked. And when they say day 28, that is meaning from the time it got bit. Okay, not from when they
No.
called us. Yeah.
No, in this case, I'm sorry, in this case, it was 18 days from day 10 to day 28. So yes, it was 28 days from the very beginning,
Mhm.
but it was only 18 days from the time when they first started applying the charcoal. And you cannot do that with any man-made drug. There's no drug under the sun that can do that so quickly. Well, we have other stories, and we'll get to those, but we're going to jump track here and go back and show you. Now we're talking about animals. We do believe in using animals for experimentation because we are very confident that when we give charcoal to the animals, they're not going to get worse. They're not going to get sick. They're going to get better. And here's a good example. This was a study done actually in Korea a number of years ago. And I've seen a recent one in another country that showed almost identical. And they showed that by giving livestock a very minimal amount of charcoal powder, again, this is not activated charcoal. This is charcoal that was ground from just plain charcoal, ground into a fine powder and added to either the water or to the feed in very minimal amounts. And when it was given to milk cows, it prevented mastitis. Now, if it prevents mastitis in cows, what about women? It increased milk production and so forth. In fattening cattle, it improved meat quality. For pigs, there was a reduction in bad smell and flies. And consequently, there was a reduction in mortality. You know, when there's bad smell, it attracts insects, and insects carry disease, and those infect the animals, and so you have a higher mortality rate. We had one customer who was raising exotic finches, these little birds. And at the time he contacted us, he had a 50% mortality rate with his exotic finches. And he started adding charcoal to their water and to their feed, and it dropped to 0. He had 0 mortality. And he told us, he said, don't tell my competitors, because he wanted to have that advantage. Well, we do want to tell his competitors, and we want to tell everybody the advantage that you have by using charcoal, whether it's chickens, whether it's cows, whether it's yourself. And here's a good example. This laboratory rat, these were old laboratory rats, have been used in labs for years, experimental rats, and they were seniors now, and they're not being used because they were past their prime. This Dr. Frolkis is a Russian gerontologist, and he started doing experiments with charcoal with these lab rats. And guess what? He was able to extend their lifespan by 34%. Increase their lifespan by 1/3 just by adding charcoal to their water and to their feed, nothing else. Now we have other experiments more recently that have been able to extend the lifespan up to 95%. It's almost unbelievable, but it's been shown in the lab that charcoal absorbs free radicals, and free radicals are associated with the aging process. Now the next slide we have here is actually a pineapple plantation in Hawaii. This is a what was the company's name? A Monsanto. It was a Monsanto pineapple plantation, and they had poisoned their plantation with a DuPont chemical called Hyvar XL. And they didn't know what to do, and they contacted little old us. We ended up selling them, I think it was over 250,000 pounds of activated charcoal powder, And within a couple, I think it was 6 weeks, they were able to go back and start planting again. Well, whether it's a DuPont product or whether it's a Monsanto product, doesn't really matter. Charcoal, it has a phenomenal ability to capture poisons. And you see a poinsettia here in the picture because a number of years ago, this greenhouse manager contacted us and spoke with our manager and said, you know, we have accidentally poisoned our entire greenhouse crop of poinsettias for this Christmas season. This particular greenhouse grower was the largest grower of poinsettias in America. And it was looking very grim that that Christmas there were not going to be any poinsettias. Well, we overnighted him something called soil detox, and it saved the poinsettia crop for that year.
It worked really well, and they ended up overnighting a lot of it. And that's the beauty of charcoal, is that they had used this herbicide and they used the wrong ratio, but you don't have to worry about that with charcoal. You can use maybe too little that it doesn't really do what you want it to do. You really can't overdo it, and that's truly amazing.
Yes, it is. And even if you didn't have the activated charcoal, you could use plain charcoal. Now, when I was in Uganda, I think it was not last year, but the year before, I read an article in the Kampala, the capital newspaper. It was an agronomist, a retired agronomist from the University of Agriculture, and he was talking about using charcoal in the banana plantations to control this particular, it's a blight, I think it was. And he says it does wonders to control blight in the banana plantation. So there you go. He didn't have activated charcoal, but he was just grinding up charcoal and spreading it around through his banana plantations. Well, I'm sure you folks have bananas. We have giant pumpkins, and they have an annual contest to see who can grow the largest giant pumpkin in America. And a number of years ago, a customer bought one of our products, and he was able to grow giant pumpkins, and he set the record in Illinois. And I don't have the weights on these, but they were big. They were so big they had to use a crane to lift them out of the garden and then bring them to the site. And he did that actually for 2 years in a row. So what we, just as an introduction, we've showed you it used in severe wounds. It's been used in prisons for severe dysentery and cholera. It's been used for animals. It's used for agriculture. It's used as a feed supplement. Well, getting on to what most people I'm sure are tuning into is how is charcoal used as a medicinal here in the 21st century? Well, it has a long history of being used. It goes back to ancient times, all the way back to ancient Egypt. It turns out they used to bury the dead in layers of sand and ground charcoal. And somehow the charcoal preserved dead people. And so they had mummies. Well, I like to say, if it can preserve dead people, how about preserving living people? How does it do in helping us stay alive? Well, we'll go through some animal studies and then we'll move on to some human applications. Here is a dog that has a cancer on its leg. It cannot walk. It's not healing. And the vet has said, you know, really, you might want to seriously think about putting it down. And the owner happened to work for a company that manufactures charcoal cloth. And they make a sterilized charcoal cloth that's used in hospitals for wound dressings. But they had a bunch of this cloth laying around, so they just wrapped their Doberman dog with this unsterilized cloth. And literally, too far. 2 hours later, the dog was up and walking, and 4 weeks later, there is the wound healed over. In 4 weeks, when their prize dog, nothing that they'd taken it to the vet for was helping at all. Here is a horse wound where it was let go too long, and they weren't able to stitch it back together. They applied this Zorflex cloth, this carbon cloth that we sell in our business, and lo and behold, healed very nicely. Now, onto a pressure sore in a hospital here in America. That is so gross. You can imagine not only is it gross, but it smells horrible. And charcoal is often used just to control wound odor that can drive everybody out of the hospital room. And the patient can't see anybody because of the smell. The nurses don't want to deal with it because it smells so bad. You sprinkle a little bit of charcoal powder in that wound, and in minutes, literally minutes, the odor is gone. It works that fast. But they apply this charcoal cloth. Now you don't have access to the charcoal cloth, but you can make a charcoal poultice. And maybe we'll get to that, showing you how to make a charcoal poultice. And if you had laid that on the wound in 106 days, 3 months, it completely healed over. That's all they had. They'd given up on antibiotics. They were not working. So you can see the amazing application and how quickly it can work. And it's used in hospitals, literally progressive hospitals around the world. Now it's known as a universal antidote for poisoning. Now, whether it's a prescription drug or a non-prescription or a street drug, illegal drug, accidental poisoning, drug overdose, whatever, most hospitals, if they do not know what the drug is, they will apply charcoal. And if it doesn't work, it's not going to add to the problem. The FDA lists charcoal as category 1, safe and effective, no known adverse side effects. Now, it can be a little bit constipating, but you just continue to drink more water. Well, you can see here in hospitals, it's used for kidney and liver dialysis units. You think of how many millions of people around the world are on dialysis 1 or 2 or 3 times a week. And it extends their lifespan because why? Because their liver or their kidneys are not functioning. They're shutting down, and charcoal is used to supplement the work of the kidneys by helping to clean the blood. And we all know, if we've read our Bibles, that it says the life is in the blood. And if the blood is dirty, it can't promote health. But if it's clean, and that's what the kidneys and the liver are supposed to do when they're functioning properly. But we've had people who are waiting in line for a kidney transplant who have started applying charcoal poultices over their kidneys and have postponed a kidney transplant, have postponed dialysis. And I remember the first time I saw this used on it was actually used on a person, a very large man who had liver cancer. And the physician I was working with, I was training as a physician assistant, and this physician said, I want you, Brother John, I want you to put a charcoal poultice over this man's kidneys. And I thought, well, I know the kidneys are filters too, but he has liver cancer. But who am I? I'm a student. So the doctor said, put it on his kidneys. I put this huge charcoal poultice over his kidneys on his back. I used white cloth. In the morning, the white cloth had turned yellow, and the poultice reeked of urine. Now, there's a little bit of magic going on, but it's really just simple physiology when you understand what's going on. The charcoal is able to cleanse the blood from the outside, not taking it internally. Isn't that amazing? And maybe if I can get to a little bit later on, there are companies now who are producing a dialysis unit. It's a little filter, no bigger than that. And in 1 hour, it can completely take a dog that's unconscious from drug overdose to that dog walking around fully conscious. And all they use in that little filter is charcoal, nothing else. The blood is filtered over that special charcoal. So it's used in hemoperfusion cartridges, wound dressings, I'll talk about that later, ostomy bags, anemia of cancer, breast cancer surgery, Crohn's disease, pouchitis, renal disease, pruritus, dental filler, and I could go on and on and on with different applications that it's used in hospitals. Now, the top of the list there was poisoning. And, children are very inquisitive, and they do it accidentally, and maybe the parents are not careful as they should be. So a number of years ago, the Kentucky Poison Control Center in America did a advertising campaign to try and get everybody in the state to have charcoal, activated charcoal, in their medicine cabinet. And then they did a follow-up. And after advertising for a month, well, there was TV, radio, billboards, and on the other media, they did this follow-up study, 138 cases. And 115 children were treated in the home because of their advertising campaign. And I suspect after this program, those of your viewers who don't have charcoal will be going out and getting some or making some. So nobody can plan for an emergency except having the emergency remedy on hand. The average home treatment was 38 minutes as opposed to 73 minutes in the emergency room at a hospital, average. So it could be longer or less. Half as many of the children vomited in the home, and they said that it saved the Kentucky healthcare system millions of dollars because of emergency room care is not cheap. Now, if you can do this at home, just think how much money not only you're saving the healthcare system, how much money you're saving yourself. Now, if you're not sure, you can take charcoal and head for the hospital if it's close by. I mean, the countries we've worked in, hospitals are not that easily accessible. And sometimes you're going to wait 12 hours in line to see a doctor while you're sitting there suffering. So it's like a fire extinguisher. You don't want to have a fire, but you have fire extinguishers in your home because, well, you never know. And it's the same way with charcoal. And the Poison Control Center, Kentucky Poison Control Center said every home should have charcoal on hand for that emergency situation. Now, I wonder how many of your guests who are tuned in here today have it. And if not, of course, they need to get out and get it. Now, here's just a short list of some of the poisons. It's a good spectrum, if you wish, of different poisons that charcoal is known to absorb, amphetamines. So all your psychoactive drugs, except for lithium, will be absorbed very quickly in a short time. Aspirin, barbiturates, chlorine, cocaine, DDT, digitalis, iodine. There we have malathion, and I think it's a herbicide, and so forth, narcotics, all the way down to THC, which is, a recreational drug. And we had this call one day from this mother. She was actually, we had two calls. The first call, it went this way. Hello. I said, hello. He said, yes. Does charcoal absorb THC? And I said, yes. And he said, thank you. Click. The second call was from a mother later on, and she called and she was quite frantic because her son had taken this recreational drug. And she said, my son is going to have a urine test in about half an hour. Do you think charcoal will work? Well, I had this moral dilemma. What am I going to do? Maybe this young fellow needs some quiet time in a prison to think about this. But, God has been extremely gracious with me and probably with a lot of our listeners here. And I thought, no, he deserves another chance. And I said to the mother, yes, I think it will help, but you have to give him a lot of charcoal. And she said, well, how much? And I said, a lot. And she said, well, how much? And I said, a lot. Give him a lot. He's only got 30 minutes. And she called me back, and I think it was a couple of weeks. She said, you won't believe this. And I'll say, what? And she said, he tested negative. So he didn't do any jail time. Hopefully, I said, well, you ought to tell your son, he needs to explore some other forms of recreation. And truly, our programs are complete. We don't want to just talk about one remedy. We want to talk about prevention. We want to talk about a diet that will prevent an addiction. Did you know a vegetarian diet used in some prisons has absolutely cut out all addiction for drugs and alcohol? One in Canada did an experiment, and one over in California put the inmates on a voluntary program of becoming a vegetarian. And guess what? All those inmates who went on this program, and some of these guys were giants. I mean, I'm 6'1", but these guys were 6'4", 6'5". And at the end of the program, some of them accepted Jesus as their savior because of a change in their lifestyle. So we want to give charcoal to them in an emergency, but we want to train people how to prevent going down that road of addiction. Here are some heavy metals. People are concerned about charcoal. Will it help with heavy metals? Yes, it will. Some not so well. The ones in red, it will. Mercury poisoning is one of the ones. And here at the bottom, you'll see radioactive metals. And I already talked to you about that. Here's a picture of a kidney dialysis machine, but it has a hemoperfusion cartridge over here on the left side of the machine. So blood comes out of the patient into the machine, this fancy machine with all these lights and whistles and lights going on and off, goes round and round and round, comes back out and back into the patient, and supposedly extends their life. But they now have protocols in the literature, in the medical literature, that if you take charcoal orally, you can take charcoal for stage 4 kidney failure. And we have stories about that. We have a medical doctor who gives his story about this minister who had come out of the hospital. His kidneys had shut down. He couldn't walk. He was in a very bad shape. And this medical doctor, he was an orthopedic surgeon, decided to put this man on charcoal and a vegetarian diet, and lots of water and charcoal treatments to his legs. The man was testified to his whole church. He says, I've lost everything. I've lost all this weight. I've lost my diabetic ulcers. I've lost all my medication. I'm feeling great. And what was the main treatment that this orthopedic surgeon used? It was charcoal, activated charcoal. Now, a lot of people ask us the question, can I make activated charcoal in my house? Well, you can't. It's made in these giant kilns. This particular kiln is a rotisserie. It rotates. It's about 28 feet in diameter, and I think it's about 100 feet long. And plain charcoal from your wood fire would go on one end, and then it's activated as it's tumbled along, and it's heated up to this glowing hot temperature of around 800 degrees Celsius, centigrade, and that activates the charcoal. And an easy way to explain that is if you have a piece of wood that weighs 5 pounds, when you take it out of the fire, it's going to weigh 3 pounds. It's going to be about the same size. When you put it into this kiln, you put it in 3 pounds, it comes out the other end weighing 1 pound. The internal structure of that charcoal has been eroded away so that it looks like a sponge. And here's a microscopic picture of one tiny particle of charcoal. And if you could somehow unfold that surface area of that particle, well, you know how big a soccer match is. It's pretty big. And that one little teaspoon would open up to the size of a soccer field. And it's this huge surface area that grabs particles to itself. So you put it in your mouth. It's not absorbed by your bloodstream. It goes from one end all the way down to the other end, and it's mopping up poisons or toxins that's in your blood that comes out to the lining of your stomach or your gut, and the charcoal pulls it out of the gut lining into itself, and it's eliminated from the body altogether. And once it's eliminated, it's not going to be reabsorbed by the system. Right. Kimberly corrected me. It's 1 teaspoon, not just 1 molecule of charcoal. 1 teaspoon of charcoal equals 1 soccer field. Now, one of the largest causes of death worldwide is gastrointestinal infections worldwide. 80% of all disease worldwide. It adds up to something like 50,000 deaths a day. When I got this statistic 10 years ago, now it may have increased because of COVID. COVID, one of the symptoms is diarrhea and vomiting. 5,000 deaths a day from diarrhea and cholera. Now, vomiting and diarrhea is common to most diseases, and it's not just HIV. It is common to a lot of things. And here's an example. Here's just a short list of different diseases, common diseases around the world that 2 of the symptoms are nausea and vomiting, bloody diarrhea. Very, very common. Whether it's turista, that's sort of like dysentery in Mexico. That's a local name for when Americans come down and eat the food and they get diarrhea. But we have people who will be proactive. They'll take charcoal before they eat for the day, and they never get turista. Now, cholera is more prevalent in, say, India and Africa, but again, you'll see nausea, diarrhea, vomiting. And once you go into cholera, you can die in 24 hours. I was working on a remote island out in the Pacific, and I talked to this one nurse, and I said, do you ever use charcoal out here? And she said, oh, Brother John. She said, not long ago, we had a case of a man who had severe cholera. And he was dehydrating so quickly, I thought he was going to die. And all I had was charcoal. It wasn't activated charcoal. This was the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And she said, I made some charcoal from coconut shells, and I made charcoal powder, and I gave him this charcoal powder, and it stopped his diarrhea almost immediately, his vomiting. And then I was able to give him rehydration salts, and he recovered. Now, just prior to that, I was working in Nepal, up in the mountains, and a report came back to me after I'd left that a man I'd met, I really liked the man, had died in 24 hours from cholera, and nobody thought to tell him to go to the clinic. Otherwise, they would have given him charcoal, and he would have survived. But they had charcoal in their hut, in their little village. They had charcoal that they cooked with. And yet he died because he didn't know that there was a remedy right within reach. Well, whether it's Teresa cholera, it could be HIV/AIDS, it could be the Spanish flu, it could be the Asian flu, and it could be, guess what? COVID-19. Rice University Medical Center, Texas A&M Medical Center, and Texas University Medical Center started working together last year in June, I think it was, working collaboratively on a treatment for COVID using, quote, inexpensive activated charcoal that can be found in any modern hospital. Well, it hasn't caught on yet, but folks, anybody who is showing symptoms for whether it's Teresa cholera, Spanish flu, common flu, COVID, one of the first things they should do is start taking charcoal, because as I said, one of the common symptoms is diarrhea and vomiting. And you can imagine how quickly your body runs down with diarrhea and vomiting. We had a call from a young man in Uganda. He ran an orphanage for HIV children. And he says, sir, he said, do you think charcoal would help? And I said, most definitely. I said, I don't think it's going to cure the HIV, but what it will do, it will help with the severe diarrhea. This young man called me back or texted me or email, I can't remember now. A couple of months later, he says, sir, it works really well. It works so well that within 24 hours, the diarrhea is stopped. It doesn't cure it, and we have to keep giving them charcoal, but it stops that diarrhea, and they feel stronger. Well, that young man invited me to Uganda, and that was our first experience. How many years ago would that have been? 10 years ago, I think, something like that. And we've fallen in love with the people. We've been back many times. We've gone to universities and trained there. We've gone to a ministerial school and taught ministers how to use natural medicine, including charcoal. Now, here's an interesting one. This is a monkey. And guess what? He's eating, my wife is telling me, Kimberly's telling me, John, calm down. I get so excited because when I think of a simple remedy that a monkey in Africa knows to use when it gets a sick stomach, I want to tell people, how is it that this monkey knows to climb down out of a tree and go over and steal charcoal from the charcoal salesman? They have these bags of charcoal along the road, and he'll go over, these monkeys will steal the charcoal and go back to their coconut tree, and they'll eat this charcoal. And this particular tribe of monkeys in Zanzibar have healthier babies, heavier babies with less mortality than the other monkey tribes that still haven't heard about charcoal. And I wonder how many millions and millions of people, maybe billions of people on this planet do not know that within arm's length, God has given them a remedy. The Bible says, the blessing of the Lord, it maketh rich, and he adds no sorrow with it. That's from Proverbs chapter 10. There are no known adverse side effects with charcoal. If it does no good, as Kimberly says, it's not going to do any harm. And she likes to say, Kimberly likes to say, you can take too little, but you cannot take too much. Take lots, and your body will tell you, oh, that was too much. Take a little bit less like next time, and maybe take a little bit less the next time. And sooner or later, your body will tell you, this is a good dose for you, but maybe not for the next person, and maybe not for a baby. So you have to experiment, but make sure you give enough. And it will not absorb your food nutrients. You can hear this all over the internet. You can hear it from professionals and doctors and chemists. We've been in this business now for 13 years. We sell charcoal to universities. We've sold it to the International Space Station. We sell it for dialysis machines. And there is no bona fide research that shows that natural charcoal does anything to reduce your nutrient content. In fact, as we saw earlier, it can extend the lifespan of animals and people by giving them charcoal. Now, we've been in the business so long.
16.
Oh, she's saying 16. It feels like 13. Now, everybody's eaten something that didn't sit right with them. And it's not just a Chinese restaurant. It could be at your church fellowship. You know, oh, it tasted so good. Sister, your dish just was so tasty. But by the time you get home, you know, it's just not sitting right. And rather than sitting there tossing back and forth, instead of going to the hospital emergency room, if you can get to one, all you got to have is a little bit of charcoal. And probably 10, 12, 15 minutes, your stomach nausea is gone, and you can go back and sleep like a baby. And that was my very first experience with charcoal. I was hitchhiking around the world. I was a lot younger than I am today. It was what, almost 45 years ago. I wandered into a mission. I wandered into a Seventh-day Adventist mission in Guatemala, Central America. And this doctor, even though he had all these drugs that he could use, he loved natural medicine. He was forever giving people natural medicine, but one of his most favorite ones was charcoal. And one day the bus pulled up at the front of the clinic, and this young father and mother jumped out of the bus, and the young father was carrying his little girl who was limp in his arms. And I saw them. I thought, oh, this is not good. This is not good. This is not good. I was not a Christian, but I was learning about health from these Seventh-day Adventist missionaries. And later on in the day, we sat down to eat, and I said to the doctor, I said, what happened with that little girl? He said, oh, I think she probably had some food poisoning and something she'd eaten, maybe some bad fish. And I just had the parents remove the clothing from the abdomen, and I made up a charcoal poultice, and I just smeared charcoal all over her belly. And within 20 minutes, that little girl was recovered consciousness and no discomfort, and the parents took her home. And I thought to myself, I thought black magic. And you know, where I was in Guatemala, there was a lot of black magic. When I lived in Puerto Rico, a lot of black magic. And I thought, oh boy, what have I got myself into? But little by little, I started learning more about charcoal and what it can do. You know, practically all bottled water has gone through a charcoal filter. It may have gone through other filters, but it's gone through a charcoal filter. Maybe you've seen these fancy aquariums, whether they're small private ones in your home or whether they're giant ones in Miami or Orlando. They all use charcoal. Here is the wastewater treatment facility in Maine, state of Maine. They bought some charcoal from us, and they wanted to do a demonstration, a public relations demonstration for the public, that when they treat their water and it goes back into the stream or into the water table, that it's pure and safe to drink. They took sewage water and they treated it with the charcoal that we sent to them. And here they are growing salmon fish or salmon fry, the small ones, before they're let back into the environment. And they proved that the water was pure enough to grow small fish that could take out all that contaminant. Well, it's not just for fish. When Europeans came across to the Caribbean, there was long ways without fresh water, and so they would light a fire inside their water barrels, scorch it with a very thin layer of charcoal powder, and that charcoal inside that barrel kept that water fresh all the way across the ocean and all the way back. And you know, you're not going to go anywhere in this world without a charcoal filter. In fact, you're not going to go anywhere in outer space. In that vast ocean of space, nobody can go out there without charcoal. Did you know that? Because one bottle, 1 liter of water on that space station, you know how much it would cost? It costs them US tax dollars anywhere between 8 to 10,000 US tax dollars. That's my money and your money to get 1 bottle, 1 liter, 1 pound of water up onto that space station. Now, when you use it, when you drink it, you can't just open it up and throw it away. That's $10,000 you're going to throw away. So what do? They have to recycle that water over and over again. Yes, I'm not going to describe it, but one of the filters happens to be charcoal. Yes, plain charcoal. It's been used for thousands of years, and actually charcoal has a reserved seat on the first manned flight to Mars. In fact, a development company has bought some charcoal cloth from us to make something for the first manned flight to Mars, because nobody's going anywhere in space without charcoal. So charcoal is used to clean water, but lo and behold, it's also used in food to make for coloring. You know, black licorice, black jelly beans. Oh, here's another one. Burger King a few years ago decided they wanted to do a joke. And so it bought some burger buns from a company that we supply charcoal to, and they had black burger buns. Well, charcoal is used to put color into food, but it's also used to take color out of food. And so the wine industry, the apple juice industry, and other industries, food industries, use charcoal to take color, unwanted color out of the food to make it nice and clear and pretty on a shelf so that you will then go and buy it. Now, it might be white grape juice. This white grape juice on the right was red grape juice until it was filtered through charcoal. Or it could be very fine vegetable oils that are clean, not only the color, rancidity, bad odor, bad flavor, it's all taken out with charcoal. The pharmaceutical industry does the same thing to take out unwanted chemicals. The nutraceutical industry, the same thing. Power plants, nuclear submarines. Nuclear submarine could not function without a charcoal filter to take out carbon dioxide. All these new electric cars, they're on the market now. They all use charcoal to take out sulfides so that these fuel cells can operate more efficiently. In that backpack, that astronaut's backpack, he's got charcoal to filter the air. And all this idea of filtering air, of using charcoal, really got to start back in World War I and II. Up to that point, the only thing activated charcoal was being used for was to take and make white sugar. You know, that's what takes the coloring out of brown cane syrup is charcoal. Something black makes something white. That makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Well, here it is in the World War I and II gas mask. It had coconut activated charcoal. And if you didn't have the mask on, you'd die a wretched death. And if not, you could survive and continue on. And here in the Iran war, you see these soldiers, they also have on charcoal masks, but what you don't see is that their combat gear is made of activated carbon cloth that's woven into their combat gear to protect them from nuclear, biological, chemical warfare. Well, warfare, I'll get it right yet. Now this nurse here in a hospital, she's wearing that same carbon cloth. That carbon cloth does everything that those military masks do, and it weighs a feather. It's antimicrobial. It kills microbes on contact. It kills bacteria on contact. It kills viruses on contact. That's how effective it is. Well, getting an idea how charcoal works. By the way, we've got about an hour and 10 minutes, and there's lots more to this program, but it may be that we'll want to cut it short. Maybe it is that you have some people that have some questions so far, Nicole, and we could take a break and do that. And,
okay.
And maybe come back at another time and finish off this program with some other things, because Kimberly has so
No
many
problem.
stories. She could do a whole program, just Kimberly alone. So
Okay, very good. We could have you back next time. So we'll talk about that. So you are ready for the question, or you want to talk about the antibacterial fungi? Then we ask the
well,
question.
let me end with that then. If you go out into a forest where there's been a fire, and you'll see trees have been scorched with like those barrels, those water barrels. It hasn't burned the tree down, but it's scorched the tree, and the whole tree is covered in charcoal. And those trees will not rot. They'll stand there. This one, when I was in British Columbia, they stand there for 100 years. They won't fall down. But here's another tree that was not burned. It was cut down, and the trunk of the tree is all ready to fall into dust because the bacteria and the viruses and the fungi have attacked that stump. And it's basically dirt. Charcoal doesn't do that. And industry knows that. And so they'll develop things that resist, that where they want to resist a bacteria influence, they'll use charcoal. And maybe this is a good place to explain that all bacteria and all viruses produce toxins. They're either called endotoxins or exotoxins. The endotoxin inside, the exo on the surface of the bacteria. And those toxins are what trigger disease symptoms. It could be nausea, it could be vomiting, it could be diarrhea, it could be fever, it can be inflammation. Any of these symptoms are triggered by the toxins on these small microbes. Charcoal is known to absorb, attract, hold, and kill thousands of these bacterial viral poisons, thousands. And yet it's not advertised because it's cheap. You know, it's a very cheap remedy that's accessible anywhere in the world that we've gone anywhere anyway. And maybe that's a good place to end, because right now the world is enveloped in something that is serious. We don't want to minimize it, but we want to emphasize there is one remedy that God has for whether you're intellectually smart or maybe you're not educated, maybe you're wealthy or maybe you're poor. It doesn't matter. God has a remedy for everybody. It's a safe remedy. And because God loves everybody, whether you're a Muslim or an atheist, whether you're, a Christian, Protestant, Catholic, Hindu, Muslim, we've been in all these countries. And when we ask the people, does God love poor people? You know what they all say? It doesn't matter what their religion. They say, yes, God must love poor people. And I say, well, if God loves poor people, then his remedies should be affordable and accessible anywhere in this world. Isn't that true? That is true. Well, ending on that note, let me see. How do I get out of this screen share? Oh, here it is. Maybe some of you folks have some questions that maybe I can answer, or maybe Kimberly can answer, and we can see what the interest is.
Oh, thank you, Brother John and Sister Kim, for that beautiful presentation. I've learned so much. So is there anyone that have a question? I see Sister Peglin Hutchinson, her question is in the chat. It says, what is the best wood to make active charcoal?
Well, the hardest wood that you can find seems to work better. If you were in Australia, you might use eucalyptus. When I was in Puerto Rico, they had one called rosewood. I mean, it was so hard, you could beat an elephant dead with it. It was so hard. Or if you have coconut, that's a very good one. Now, if you're in Asia, you would have a lot of bamboo. I mean, this bamboo is in a lot of countries, but they're very hard. And so if you can find that, we found that seems to work the best. Or if you're if you're on stateside, maybe use something like oak tree, but there are other hardwoods as well that work very well. Where you are, coconut shell. I mean, it's probably one of the best in the world. That's where activated charcoal first started, was with coconut shell. So you have a very good starting product where you are. But I don't know what kind of cooking charcoal that you use there. What is it made from? Does anybody know?
Can't hear that.
You're on mute. There we go.
I'm not sure what it is made from. I think probably it's just wood. But the other next question was asked, how do we any wood? But somebody's asking.
I'm almost sure that what they're selling for cooking charcoal is a hardwood. I would just buy that and wash it off with boiled water, and then figure a way out to pound it into a powder. I mean, I'll go outside as a demonstration. You can see it on our website. I go outside and I pound it up in a bag first into smaller pieces, and then I put it in a blender. Kimberly won't let me use her good blender. She'll let me use her old blender. And I go and use that old blender, and I do it outside because, you know, charcoal wants to go everywhere once it turns to a powder.
Don't we have a video on it?
There's a video of me doing it on the website. And I blend that up, and it makes a very, very good fine powder. And you can drink it. You can make poultices and bandages with it. You can put it in your bathtub. It's good enough for little babies. It works fine. And if it's a little bit too coarse, for instance, a colicky baby. Colicky baby can't sleep, nobody sleeps. Isn't that true? So you put some charcoal in some water. You let the charcoal settle out. You pour the charcoal, the gray water, off the top into a baby bottle, put a nipple on it, and you give it to the baby. Usually within 5 to 10 minutes, the baby will stop crying. That fast. Okay, you have another question.
The other question from Sister Letitia, she's asking, how do I make it?
Well, if you
Just
don't
answer it.
make it, go down to the beach and make a campfire. Sing some songs, you know, and tell stories, and then put the fire out and take the charcoal home with you. Don't let anybody have the charcoal. You take it for yourself and you go home and make your own charcoal powder.
Okay, the next question from Zenora. She's asking, is charcoal safe for women who are pregnant?
Oh, let me tell you a story. Let me tell you a story. When we were in Uganda, the young man that I told you about that ran an orphanage. What was that? His name was Willie. And what was her name? No, anyway, his wife Gladys could not get pregnant. She could get pregnant, but she could not stay pregnant. And so she was not able to carry to term. And when we were leaving, I said, was there anything you wanted? And he says, yes, I'd like the charcoal, please. So we gave him all the activated charcoal we had. And then we came back a couple of years later. We were teaching at a village and also at a university. And I asked Willie and Gladys to come and give their testimony. And so we show these pictures, and we'll show it on another program maybe. But Gladys came, and Gladys is holding her baby. Healthy baby. And I said, folks, you can now see it with your own eyes. Here is a charcoal baby. A nice black baby from charcoal, because it helped her. What did she have? She had
well, I can't remember what she had.
But she couldn't carry the baby.
She would lose the baby about 5-6 months. And when we were leaving, they had asked us, do you think that charcoal would work?
She had fibroids.
They're wondering if charcoal would work, you know, to carry the baby full term. And we said, we don't know, but why not try? And so anyway, when she was sharing, when doing that program, her cousin was with her, and her cousin could not get pregnant. And so after the baby was born and everything, she said, what do you think about me? And do you think the charcoal will help me get pregnant? And she says, why don't you try? And so she did. And lo and behold, she did get pregnant. And we had shared this story with one of the gals that now works with us. And she had a, you know, a 6-year-old or whatever, but she hadn't, she couldn't get pregnant anymore. And I shared this with her, and she started taking the charcoal on a daily basis. And after about 6 months, she got pregnant.
And now she brings the baby to work.
Yeah, she's working.
But let me tell you, in that little village, when those two young mothers said, here's my black baby, healthy baby, and the other one was, I think she was 3 or 4 months pregnant, that whole, there was more than 100 people there. They all started jumping up and down. It looked like Pentecost. And they're all saying, Amina, amen, amen, praise God, praise God. They were so happy for these young mothers who, you know, for them, having a baby, that's their welfare system. It's everything. It's their life. And so, yes, to answer that question, it can help. But it ultimately, you know, it's in God's hands. You know, the Bible says that God knows us when we're in our mother's womb. He knows the hairs on our head. He knows us by name. So take it to God and try charcoal and see if God will reward you with a healthy, happy baby.
Sister Joanne, you can unmute and ask your question.
You want me to mute myself?
Oh, Sister Joanne, and this
Oh, Sister Joanne, yes.
Brother John, I know you mentioned drinking charcoal. Does it have any effect on minerals in the body? There is one reading I did that it says if we take too much, it can remove minerals. What's your take on that? And could charcoal remove, like, can it help with tumors?
Well, that first question, I kind of answered it already, but it's a very good question. And you will find on the internet over and over again, sites that say, oh, be careful because charcoal will absorb your vitamins and your minerals and it will deplete your nutrient content and you might get sick. I have no idea where they're getting this information. I've written to all these people, not all, a number of them, and I asked them, please send us this research because we talk about it all the time. It's our business. We'd like to see this research. But from an industrial point of view, from a commercial aspect, we sell charcoal to food manufacturers. And we know chemically, charcoal absorbs minerals very, very poorly, if at all. So as far as minerals are concerned, like iron, it just doesn't work. You know, for iron poisoning is probably one of the biggest poisonings there is amongst children. You know, they take they get a hold of these vitamins and they eat iron tablets and they get sick. And a lot of kids have died from just 1-a-day iron pills. And charcoal doesn't work, not very well. I wouldn't use it for a remedy. So charcoal does not absorb minerals, if at all. Now, as far as vitamins is concerned, there is some evidence that coal-based charcoal will absorb man-made vitamins. So if you use you'll never find coal-based charcoal used as a food, as a supplement in any health food store or anything like that. It's still a charcoal and it will work for a lot of things, but it's different than a wood-based charcoal. And vitamins and proteins are very large particles, and hardwood or natural fiber charcoals just don't pick them up very well at all. But they will pick up man-made, man-engineered vitamins. So if you're taking, you know, natural vitamins, where's the best place for natural vitamins? The doctor of the future will prescribe no drugs, but will prescribe what? Food. So when you go down to your marketplace and you see the lady there with all of her beautiful fruits and vegetables spread out before her, she is the doctor of the future. She should be your main doctor. That's where you get the most premium vitamins and minerals. So hopefully that will answer your question, the first question. And then the second one about tumors. We have a lot of stories about tumors.
Which one?
And there's, whether it's breast tumors, whether it's, I don't know.
Well, we had an amazing one when we were in Australia. And after a program, Polish grandma came up to us and told us about their experience. They had a friend who had a brain tumor, and the doctors weren't going to operate because it was too dangerous to operate. Either he would go blind or he'd probably die on the table, is what they suspected. So he had these excruciating headaches. And anyway, this couple, John and Julie, they're elderly, and they went to him and asked him if he'd be interested in trying a charcoal poultice. And he says, I'm willing to try anything. And so they made a very huge poultice, you know, from his chin all the way to the back, and they covered it. And he did this all the time. And in 2 weeks, his headaches were almost gone. In 3 weeks, he went in for an MRI, and the doctors were very excited because they said, your tumor is shrinking. And then in another 3 months, he went in for another MRI, and lo and behold, the doctors were extremely excited, and they said there is no need for surgery. So it was very amazing. And we've had people who have had brain tumors who did go for chemo and radiation and whatnot. And so every time that they went for radiation, they would apply the charcoal afterwards when they got home to help pull out all of the radiation, because coconut shell charcoal will absorb it.
Well, you know, that's what maybe a dramatic experience, but there's all kinds of tumors. I mean, we have animals who've had tumors, and the owners have given charcoal capsules or applied a charcoal poultice. It's very hard to get a bandage on an animal because they want to rip it off. But there are different ways of applying it. As a standalone treatment for a tumor, I would be thinking of other things, but I would definitely use it. And I know in breast cancers, some women have used it to help bring the tumor to a head. They've done it for not tumors, but for cysts, bring a cyst to a head and then lance it and be able to remove it that way easier. I did mention earlier that charcoal is used in breast cancer surgery. It's used to identify the tumor. So when they start the surgery, they want to mark the tumor, and they'll use charcoal to do that. Not as a cure, but as a surgical aid in removing the tumor.
I was just going to mention on breast tumors, it's really, really common if you're going to put it on a breast tumor. If the tumor hasn't worked its way out, the charcoal will probably cause the skin to break and the tumor to start oozing out. That is not uncommon. So putting a poultice over a breast tumor, you can pretty well expect it to break the skin and work its way out that way. And the other tumors don't seem to do it, but the breast it does.
We have a statement from a doctor back in the mid 1800s. He was a military doctor in England, and he talks about even then that charcoal was used in all military, naval, and civil hospitals. And one of the things that they were using it for was the treatment of open cancers. So it does have a long history. That's over 160 years, 170 years ago. And it wasn't activated charcoal. It was just hand ground fine charcoal powder. So again, it might not be the answer. It's not going to add to the problem. And it would certainly be one of the things that I would encourage a woman to try. Is there something?
How about the mercury? Like when someone have mercury in the mouth, like a mercury filling, will the charcoal help to with the chelation, helping to get rid of that mercury? Or should they have to remove the filling first and then do the charcoal for a few days?
I'm going to let Kimberly answer that question, but let me first say that one of our customers is the International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology. It's a worldwide organization that does not believe in mercury amalgam fillings. And they buy charcoal from us and they distribute it, and their dentists use it and so forth and so on. But Kimberly has had some very interesting experiences, not only personally, but also with other people who have called in. So Kimberly, why don't you share what you have?
Okay, so mine is actually quite a personal story, and you can find it on charcoaltimes.com. That's our blog, and it's under charcoal protocol. So if you want to read it and get more information. But anyway, I had my mercury amalgams removed in my lower half, and I had searched out a doctor that was supposed to be really good. And anyway, I had taken the charcoal before, and then afterwards I swished with it, and then I just didn't bother. Well, it was still leaching after. It was still in my system. I hadn't taken enough. And it was some weeks after I'd had the mercury amalgam removed, and I was getting really, really foggy. And eventually somebody who was a friend of mine at work just said to me, "What's going on? Are you getting Alzheimer's? You keep asking the same question over and over again." And I went home, and we have what we call, it was then we used to call it Detox 1600. Now we call it Detox and Cleanse. It's our coconut shell, the top of the line charcoal. And I went home and I just took lots. I mean, I was just taking glasses and glasses and putting, tablespoons in. And it's unbelievable. But by, I don't know, 2-3 days, my brain was so clear. And so anyway, this led into my doing a charcoal protocol that's 13 weeks that I won't talk about now. You can just go to the blog and read about it, charcoaltimes.com, and just look at the protocol. But now what I personally do on a daily, I do a maintenance, which is now 2 tablespoons. It used to be 1 tablespoon a night. Now it's 2 tablespoons. Well, lo and behold, back in January 2020, before COVID broke out, I was starting to have some problems with my gums and my teeth. And anyway, long story short, I went to the doctor. I needed to get some small fillings, but he said, no, actually you need this type of surgery. And that didn't sound cool to me. So I decided to do something different. I used to take my charcoal. I used to brush my teeth first, or excuse me, I used to take my charcoal and then brush my teeth. Okay. But now I decided I'm going to do something else. I need to have that charcoal sit in my mouth, inside my mouth all night long. So what I did was I just take like a quarter cup of warm water, put my 2 tablespoons of charcoal in, and I'd swish it in my mouth, okay, 3 times. I'd swish, drink, swish, drink, swish, and drink it. And I'd have quite a bit of charcoal sitting on my gums and teeth all night long. And so I started doing this by the end of January. Then COVID hit, and there's no way I could get into a dentist. And then finally I found a dentist down in Denver that sounded pretty good. So I went to him after COVID opened up. And so I had never been to him before. So they did a full mouth x-ray to figure out what they're going to do. And he was not for the surgery and everything, which was what I wanted to hear. Anyway, after he did the full mouth x-ray and they're looking at my x-rays, he just stared at them for a while. And all of a sudden he turned to me and says, "You've had really good dental work done in the past." And I said, "Well, why do you say that?" And he said, "Because you've had a number of root canals and you have no infections." And so the reality is the charcoal is keeping at bay infections. And you can go on our website and see where actually I've had some serious dental infections. One time it looked like I had a half of a golf ball in my mouth. But now I do this every night and I have no infections in my gums whatsoever, and it's helping my teeth stay strong. So it's a real win-win situation. There's also that story's on the blog.
Oh, but Kimberly, I've heard online that charcoal's not good to brush your teeth with. I've seen it on the line in a number of places where it says if you brush with charcoal, it's going to wear away your teeth prematurely.
Yeah, and so we actually have our own charcoal toothpaste, and we literally sent it into a dental university in Indiana, and they tested our toothpaste against, big brands, everything else. And ours has the lowest abrasion and it has charcoal in it because charcoal toothpaste is really big. A lot of people have it. But they're really saying, well, no, the charcoal toothpaste, the charcoal in it is not safe. And in reality, it's safer than the other toothpaste, the big names,
Well, it's not
as far as being
it's
abrasive.
not the lowest, but it's below 100. And all the other name brands run between 100 and 200. So ours is well below the abrasive level of the name brands that you're going to see out there on the market. So charcoal is very good for your teeth. As far as the mercury is concerned, it's not going to pull it out of your mouth. That's going to have to be mechanically removed somehow. But these dentists, this dental organization, they have the patients rinse their mouth before they remove the mercury amalgam, and they have them rinse their mouth after they've done the removal with charcoal water as well. So,
I haven't done my upper teeth. I'm just really kind of not too keen on doing that. And so with doing my charcoal all the time, I take 2 tablespoons every night, and I literally let it sit in my mouth all night long. And well, the dentist said that my gums and teeth look great, and I don't have the brain fog. And a lot of people will ask, well, should you go off of the charcoal for a while? And that really seems to make a lot of sense. And so I literally would do that. I would go off for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, sometimes a month or whatever. And then every time that I would go back on my, schedule of taking it every night, about 3 days, 4 days in, I just start feeling so much clearer. And I just, after a while, I just don't. I might miss a night here and there, but no, I'm just taking it regularly. And another thing, people say that the charcoal will cause constipation. That's very true. If you take charcoal sporadically, just occasionally, whatnot, probably every time you take it, it may cause constipation. But a very interesting thing happens if you take charcoal on a daily basis. Your body will actually acclimate to the charcoal, and it will no longer cause constipation. Your body will actually eliminate better, and you'll become more regular. And this is not only my experience and a lot of our customers' experience, but this was actually proven by an empirical study by medical doctors, I believe, over in Romania.
So charcoal is good for your teeth, but it's good for your whole body. And if charcoal is pulling out nutrients out of the body when you're eating it, then Mrs. Dinsley here should be really in bad shape. But she's a lot, I shouldn't say, she's older than she looks.
Thanks a lot. So anyway, go back and look at the study on the rats. I mean, it extended their life 34% over the rats who didn't it's in the book, so you can read how they actually did the study with this group of rats. Half of them got the charcoal and half didn't. The rats that received the charcoal, and it was quite a bit actually, they were the ones who lived 34% longer. So did it compromise their health? Then Dr. David Cooney, who is the really big kahuna doctor when it comes to chemical engineer, when it came to charcoal, he's now deceased. They did a study on sheep, and they gave the sheep, first of all, they tested the sheep, their blood, their urine, their hair, before they started them on charcoal, okay? And then they started giving them 5% of their food intake was charcoal. So that's quite a bit. And every time during 6 months, and that's a pretty long study actually. And so every time they checked the sheep, their tests were better from the previous times. They just kept getting better and better and better. So the blood was better, their urine, everything was better. So, you're just going to have to ask for those studies. I'm not saying, that if you experience something negative or whatever, listen to your body. But I guess I am, in a way, living proof, because I've been doing this for years now. And it's really helped with my skin. Used to have a lot of breakouts, a lot of brown spots. I still have a couple brown spots that are really determined to stay there. But it's just been amazing what the charcoal has done for me.
So today.
And when I did that protocol, go read the protocol on charcoal, was it charcoaltimes.com? It's a 13-week protocol. And when I was like 7 weeks, 8 weeks, I'm not sure. I wish I had did a journal, but I didn't. I passed a huge parasite. And at first I didn't even know what it was. I was just like, freaked me out, and I went online. And then after I was finished with the protocol, I was doing the maintenance level of 1 tablespoon, and I was just reflecting and thinking, wow, I passed that parasite and I feel really good. And but I think that was about it. And then all of a sudden it dawned on me that I no longer had candida. Now, when I was a little girl, I had strep throat almost once a month, and no joke. And they would bring me to the doctor, and the first day I would get a shot of penicillin. Then they bring me back to the doctor, and I get another shot of penicillin. Then when I was around 7 or 8 and I could take the pills, they would give me pills besides. And I always had candida. I always had a yeast infection. I always had to wear pads. And I'm just like, hey, I don't need to wear these pads anymore. And so it was just really amazing. It knocked out my candida, because charcoal is antifungal and antibacterial.
So Sister John, I'm asking, what would you say would be the right amount to take? Would you suggest it go like maybe twice a day, 3 times a day? And would it be necessary to add some psyllium husk to that and some clay while you are doing it daily, while one is doing it daily?
I don't use any of the psyllium seed husk, and I don't use any clay. I just take the charcoal straight.
Okay.
If you want to, you certainly can. Everything, there's no nutritional value to charcoal, 0. All charcoal does is absorb toxins and poisons, and if you can live without those, So if you want to add something that has some mineral or nutritional value, that's just fine. It's basically the $1 million question, how much to take. And we're not doctors, but going on to Charcoal Times and just seeing what other people have done, starting small, like if it's somebody is prone to constipation, start very small, and just work your way up.
Let me jump in there. I can tell you that at any hospital, the average dose for an infant child, say 6 months to 5 years, is 24 grams. That's 2.5 tablespoons of charcoal powder. That's a tremendous amount and they'll give that maybe 3 times over 8 hours if there's a poisoning event. And for an adult, it's 50 grams, which is 5 heaping tablespoons in 8 hours. So you can see that in a hospital environment, that they want to give more. If they don't know what the source of the poisoning is or how much, they want to make sure that they give enough. So in the case of poisoning, you can see that the body can tolerate a lot of charcoal. I don't think you personally, from all of our experience and all the stories and testimonies we have, I don't think you need that much. I'm absolutely surprised how a little bit can go so far and do so much. I think 1 to 2 tablespoons is ample for almost any calamity or any poisoning. But again, some people will take it with slippery elm powder to help it go down easier. One of my favorite, one of the greatest proponents of charcoal was a woman named Ellen White. And she would take charcoal, she recommended taking charcoal with a vegetable oil. And it worked extremely well, she says, for any kind of stomach upset. And so whether it's a colicky baby or whether it's gas or GERDs or, and even farther down in the gut, whether it's Crohn's or celiac or irritable bowel, all those, anything associated with ulcers in the mouth, all the way down to the anus, charcoal is an amazing remedy. I mean, just amazing. And if it does no good, it does no harm. And God has another remedy that you can use. Just look around. If charcoal is not working for you, there is another one that will work. Flaxseed is a great remedy.
And also, when he mentions the olive oil, that is a really good one to keep you from the constipation. So using olive oil and charcoal together, drinking it is really good. What we find is that when people are able to take charcoal internally, one thing is that charcoal doesn't discriminate between poisons. So if you're on medications, it most likely will absorb your medication. So then you have to decide that with your doctor if you're going to take it or not. But we find that when people are able to take the charcoal internally, and are able to use it topically, you know, as a poultice, okay, it does work faster. But we're so oriented to taking things internally, but I'm telling you, the charcoal poultices, like you saw earlier in the program, are amazing because charcoal can literally pull toxins from deep tissue. So always think both. Which one should I be using?
As an example of that, we were putting on a program in Michigan, and a busload or van load of Amish people came up to the program. And one of the ladies came up to me in one of our breaks and said, John, would you mind if I give a little testimony? And I said, sure, what's it about? She says, well, I've had skyrocketing high blood pressure. And I thought, oh no, I don't want to go that direction because I don't know how, I just don't want to talk about it because it sounds too much like anti-physiology. I don't know the physiology, how that would work. And I thought, okay. I said, go ahead and give your story to the group. Now this woman, I think she had 5 babies, and with every pregnancy, she'd gotten heavier and heavier, and her blood pressure continuing to climb. It was, at the time, it was 220 over 180. Now, just for your audience, let's say 120 over 80 is close to normal. As close to normal as we should is good. This one was 220 over 180. And she said, you know, she told the people, I had this terrible blood pressure and it was dangerous. I knew it was dangerous. And I went on to Charcoal Remedies website and I heard about charcoal, but I didn't see anything for high blood pressure, but I thought I'd give it a try. And so she got a bathtub with warm water, and I don't know how much powder, charcoal powder she put in there. It might've been a cup, wasn't a lot. And she said, I crawled into that bathtub and it just felt so relaxing. It put me to sleep. And she said, when we checked my blood pressure, it went from 220 down to 180 over 120. And I couldn't believe my ears. I thought, how can that possibly be doing that? I don't understand the physiology behind that. Nevertheless, here's a woman giving her testimony. So who am I to argue? Well, as it would happen, it was a month or 6 weeks later, we were in Missouri, I think, at a seed festival. And who comes up over the hill? Here is this lady with her husband, the same woman. She walks up and says, Brother John, I have another story for you. And I said, what is it? She said, just the other night, I've been taking these charcoal baths and they do so much for not just my blood pressure, but they just relax me so much. And I said, yeah. She said, I took a charcoal bath. I did everything I've always done. And I felt so good. I got out of bed. I went to bed in the middle of the night. I turned to my husband. I said, husband, get me to a hospital now. And she was frantic. She said, I'm dying. They got her to the hospital. You know what her blood pressure was? It was 120 over 80. She had not experienced normal blood pressure for so long that her blood pressure, it caused her to panic. She thought she was dying, but all she had was normal blood pressure. Isn't that amazing? Now, don't ask me how it worked. I don't know. All I have is this woman's testimony. And
praise be to God. Amen.
God is the master chemist. He has something in charcoal that I don't understand. But
we
anyway,
don't want. Okay, Brother John. It's time is winding up. I don't want us to go beyond 7.
Oh yes, for sure.
So somebody's asking, do you supply charcoal to the health facility for wound care?
We sell charcoal everywhere. We sell it to the FDA, the USDA, to hospitals, and we supply all kinds of health and beauty companies with charcoal. As I said, we buy charcoal from around the world, and we ship charcoal around the world. We sell charcoal to Israel, and they make charcoal ice cream.
Wow.
We sell charcoal to Iceland, and they make charcoal chocolates. We sell charcoal to Hawaii, and they make
Let them talk.
black lava. So it's used in all kinds of foods. I'm not sure if that's answering your question, but you know, if you don't have a hardwood charcoal, if you don't have the best one, in Korea, they use pine trees. I wouldn't use a pine tree because it's a softwood. But what I'm trying to say is you can use it with absolute safety. It's just a safe remedy for whatever you want to do it with.
So if you want, so you would supply the health care facility for wounds. That's what you're saying, Brother John?
Say that again.
You have supplied health care facilities for wounds, cuts, right? Okay.
We market a charcoal that is used in hospitals. It's the Cadillac of medicinal charcoal.
Okay. Somebody's asked, can pimento or cedar wood be used to make active charcoal?
Say that once more, Nicole.
Can pimento or cedar wood be used to make active charcoal?
You can. Again, cedar is a softwood. It's also aromatic, and if I had nothing else to use, I'd use it. But usually, if there's cedar around, or juniper, or pine, which are softwoods, typically you'll find a hardwood not that far away.
Okay. So it's the same for the fruit tree, because somebody is asking, is fruit tree more beneficial or ideal for making active charcoal?
What kind of tree?
Fruit trees.
Fruit trees are all hardwoods. Yes, you can use those. In fact, they make a very good cooking charcoal as well.
Okay. Sister Kimberly, somebody's asking for the protocol, but if you could just type the site in the chat where they can go to get your protocol information.
Okay. And charcoaltimes.com. It's just a blog.
Kimberly has
and the
posted.
protocol is right at top, so you can't miss it. It's right at the top. It says charcoal protocol.
Okay, Tamika will type it in the chat. Charcoaltimes.com.
Yeah, like New York Times, but charcoal times.
Charcoaltimes.com.
Yep.
Yeah. So somebody's asking a question. Is it safe for diabetics? That's charcoal, and can it be? Well, yes, it sells at health store. So I want to know, is it safe for diabetic, and how often would a diabetic person take it?
Yeah, we had one. I'm going to just name some unusual cases. We have typical cases, wounds for sure. You'll go to a nursing hospital, nursing home, and the person has their foot all wrapped up, and next time you go there, the foot is gone. They've amputated it. And if you go back again, next time you go back, maybe a couple months later, both feet are gone. And so we had one minister, he said, you know, I started giving treatments, charcoal foot baths in nursing hospitals, and no more amputations. So that takes care of the poor circulation, the infections that do not want to heal on diabetics. It works great for that. So talking about infections, charcoal is a superb treatment for diabetic ulcers, foot ulcers, and it can be anywhere on the body. But then as far as blood sugar is concerned, for some reason, charcoal helps to regulate blood sugar. Don't ask me how. I just know that I've read it in the literature, and we had one specific case. A man bought a 5-gallon pail of premium activated charcoal powder. And so I asked him, either I did or Kimberly asked him, I said, what are you using this for? And he says, well, I'm severe diabetic and my blood sugar is totally under control, but the hospital where I've been going for years know that I'm an extreme case. And I told them I was using charcoal and they want to do a test to see what is happening. And I tried contacting him several times after. I never could get back to him, but he was basically symptom free. Then there's one more level, and that's diabetic retinopathy. When you get into the eyes, you could spend 2 hours with Kimberly on just eyes alone. I mean, it's what charcoal does for eyes is absolutely nothing less than miraculous. Restoring eyesight. You know, Jesus, remember the story where Jesus healed a man who was blind? He reached down and he scooped up some red clay and he spit on it and he made a little poultice and he anointed the man's eyes. And then he said, go to the pool and take a hydrotherapy treatment. And he went to the pool and he had a hydrotherapy treatment. And guess what? Then he could see. We have stories almost on that level of healing of the eyes, but it's going to take too long and we're out of time. And so you're going to have to invite Kimberly back and she'll spend a whole hour talking about eyes. She's got some, no, you can't talk about them. I'm sorry.
No,
Can't talk about
the diabetes. You didn't really tell them
Anyway.
how to take it. Certainly it will affect
So we will have you back. So we'll talk off the air when you're available and all of that. We will have you back. Is there any other question? We'll facilitate one more question and then we're going to ask Brother John if he could just close off in prayer.
You tell him. Any more questions? Kimberly did mention the fact that charcoal does not discriminate against poisons. All drugs are pharmacologically classified as toxins. That's why when you overdose, you go to a hospital and they give you charcoal. So if you are taking some sort of medication, you need to think that the charcoal may interfere with that medication. So you'll want to talk with your physician before you make that. If you may want to counsel with him and tell him you'd like to experiment with charcoal and what does he suggest. So just be aware that if you are on a medication, there's a good chance it will interfere with it.
Thank you, Sister Kim and Brother John. It was a very, very, very informative presentation. I've learned a lot of things have been reinforced. I want to thank the persons who are still on the platform for staying with us. And I want to thank those who were here. And when we do set the date, you'll hear again when Sister Kim will do our presentation on highs with charcoal or whatever the Lord leads her to do, she will present. And so thank you very much. I hope that persons have been educated and they can make wise decisions. And as Brother John said, consult your doctor before you do anything. Charcoal is amazing. It's even, we call it pink eye in Jamaica. It can even be used to wash for pink eye if you have pink eye. There's so much things that charcoal can do. And so what I don't use the warm water as Sister Kim says she used to drink the charcoal. What I do, I just take a little in my mouth and squash it around and just keep it in my mouth overnight. So I'll probably look at her protocol and see what I can do. But it is amazing. And it is also very good to just detox your body, to take out the toxic. We're living in a toxic environment. So charcoal is amazing. And I thank you very much. And I thank those who stayed on the platform, those who asked questions, and those who just listen. You can share. Remember, when the flyer come out, you can share it with anyone. Everybody needs to know about the natural remedies that the Lord has provided for us to be well, not only physically, but spiritually. Because a healthy mind will give us a healthy spiritual mind also. So yes, Brother John, over to you to close off in prayer for us.
Sure. Let's just bow our heads. Our Heavenly Father, we are so grateful for your love for us. Around this big world with all of its troubles and heartaches, your Holy Spirit is still there looking to help us, looking to heal us. And you are the divine physician. You not only created us, but you can heal us as well. And I pray, Lord, that each one of us will take this information, not just for ourselves, but you'll give us a holy boldness to share it with the people that we know, with our family, with our neighbors, people we work with, our churches, wherever, Lord. And that you will, even if we have a very little bit of faith, Lord, you've told us that you will bless the seed of faith. And really, we rely on your blessing on all these natural treatments, whether it's charcoal or hydrotherapy or aloe vera or any of the other herbs. Lord, all these things need to be blessed by you. And then we can be assured that you will be there to help us. Continue to bless this program, neighbor to neighbor, to neighbor, to neighbor, to neighbor, to neighbor, and for Facebook and around the world and social media. We know this information from week to week or month to month can reach people on the other side of this world and benefit them as well. Bless this ministry, I pray. I thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you again. Thanks everyone, and have a good rest of the evening, and good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
I'll be in touch with you, Sister Kim.
Bye-bye.
Okay, I've got the dough, so I can start the